Okay, well, we'll get started here. We don't want to keep you here any longer than you have to be. Our time, all of our times are valuable. So I'll start off by welcoming everybody. Thank you for coming. This is very important. This is an informational meeting. We want to get all that information out there. That's all we want to do is get you guys all informed. This is an informational meeting, and we'll get a lot of facts out there. Nope. Try to stay away from the opinions. My name is Hugo Barajas. I'm one of the Levy co-chairmen.
And I'm Rick Stidham. I'm a Levy chairman as well.
And that's my beautiful sister, Josie. She's also on the steering committee. We're going to start with Troy. He's got a statement he needs to make, and then we'll go from there. Troy? Superintendent Troy Armstrong, I'm sorry.
It's just Troy. I've had a couple questions today, and some other people have had questions in the community about open enrollment. So I wanted to clarify that. Open enrollment. So a student in a public school who attends Wauseon schools, we'll use that as an example. If Wauseon schools did not have an extracurricular program, a student that attends Wauseon schools cannot go to another school and participate in extracurriculars. Okay? So there's some confusion about that. It's not on this frequently asked question because the Levy Committee had printed that before, but it's on the website. And it's an Ohio High School Athletic Association bylaw. I think it's 4-3-1, and you can look that up. But if a student is a resident living and attending Wauseon schools, they cannot open enroll, or they cannot go to another school district and participate in extracurriculars if Wauseon Schools isn't offering extracurriculars. So just to clarify that, okay? But you can find that by reading the OHSA bylaws and on the Levy website, WauseonLevy.com. You can find the frequently asked questions, and then it's one of the questions in there. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Troy. There's coffee and donuts back there. If anybody wants up, get up anytime. Got to go to the restroom, whatever. That's fine. We're going to treat you some donuts and cookies and coffee. Okay. So we want to, right off the top, we want to take care of the 5 of the most popular frequently asked questions. You guys all have the sheet, or it's available back there. There's like 37 questions in there. We're going to try to tackle the top 4 or 5 questions right off the bat. Most of these questions will be answered by Troy or Dave, so I'll get started with number 1. Troy or Dave, why are we asking for 1.75% earned income levy? Why not say 1.5? Why not 1.0 traditional? And how much money is this going to generate for the district? And where are the funds all going to go once we get it? And how is that going to be allocated once the levy, if that levy passes?
What question number is this?
1.
Okay.
So the levy will generate, based on the Ohio Department of Income Tax estimates, $3.8 million per year. Now that's not going to all come at once. In this fiscal year 2023, we'll receive around $225,000. The following year, $2.7 million, and then the third year out, it ratchets up to $4 million. So it's not an even flow. That money will be used to operate the schools. And the reason that we needed to go with 1.75 is because the projections are in 2024, the district is we're going to completely deplete our savings, just operating status quo. If we pass the levy, we'll be able to continue status quo at 1.75. Anything less, we will run out of savings without drastic cuts.
To add to that, so back in 2020, the Board of Education began talking about an income tax, and specifically an earned income tax, which there's a difference between an earned and a traditional. A traditional income tax taxes everyone. An earned income tax only taxes the income that is earned. And Dave will do a much better job explaining that than I do, but kind of like what you would have on your W-2, you earn that money. And so in 2020, the Board of Education was prepared to go to the voters in November of 2020 with a 2% earned income tax. COVID hit in March, and the board felt that it wasn't a good idea to go out in 2020. So at that point in time, a property tax, an emergency property tax at 4.35 mils was renewed by the voters on a continuing basis. Fast forward to 2021, that's when the earned income tax at 1.7 or at 2.0 went on the ballot in November. In 2020, there are 4 different community meetings. In 2021, there are 3 different community meetings, and that was how information got out about that. So the 1.75, that's how the 1.75 was originally 2.0, but then 1.75 this time around. Originally 2.0 had 1.75 operating and 0.25 permanent improvement. After the failure in November, the board determined to just go back to the voters for the operating portion, the 1.75. The board considered everything from 0.25 to 2.5, because an income tax has to increase or decrease in 0.25 increments, in quarter increments. So the board, in looking at the financial forecast, that's where they originally landed on 2, which we could still use 2%, but decided to go with the 1.5. Like Dave said, the 1.5 will get us through our
1.7.
Yeah, 1.75. Sorry.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that does that.
Okay. But the 1.75 will get us through our 5-year forecast, but it will keep our savings at a level where it's at right now, which doesn't give us a lot of room to do new things or to do things that we have cut over the past. In 2011, we cut industrial technology, metal shop, drafting and design, home economics, computer lab, and that stuff never came back. Our workforce development is an area that needs improved in the district. So, you go.
There's more seats up here if anybody wants.
Plenty of seats up here,
Right
yes.
If anybody wants to sit in the front.
So the number 2 frequently asked question that I'm approached with, this doesn't necessarily jive with the sheet, but what does this district have planned for the district so this doesn't have to happen again in 5 years? What is the plan to keep this district financially solvent? Troy?
That was supposed to be my question, but it's okay.
That's how we roll.
So this is a question that was added to the frequently asked question document after the printing of the Levy Committee document. So it is out on the website. But a number of things that the district is doing. One, every single year, the auditor's office, the state of Ohio, the auditor's office comes into the district and audits our financials, okay? And every year we get a clean audit. You can go back as far as you can go on the auditor's website when we get a clean audit. So fiscally, the district is responsible. Okay, we get a clean audit. So we're going to continue. That will continue. That's an annual audit. That will continue. We're also working with the auditor's office, and we will for the life of our 5-year forecast. We'll work with the auditor's office on our performance. We'll get feedback from the auditor's office, and that's due to our financial state right now. And so we'll continue to work with the auditor's office on any input they may have for the district. Also, the board is going to establish a finance committee. This finance committee will be made up of up to 2 board members, because in case you don't know, a board of education, there's 5 members. Those members can't gather and talk business. If there's 3 of them, it's a board meeting. So you can't have 3 board members. You could have up to 2 on this finance committee. So It'll consist of up to 2 board members, myself, the treasurer, and then community members. The board will solicit community member assistance on that. And that will be a finance committee that will look at our finances and give the board feedback and input on the $30 million budget that the district has. And so in addition to that, the district will continue to do what we've always done. And that is whenever a position comes open, so if we have a retirement or a resignation, every time we look at that position and we say, does that need to be filled at its full place, or is that something we can absorb? Can we cut? Can we reduce? We've done that here recently. Our EMIS coordinator resigned and went to Anthony Wayne to be their EMIS coordinator, and we absorbed her position into another position, combined 2 positions. We did that earlier in the year when our special ed secretary resigned. We absorbed that into 2 positions into one. So we'll continue to do that. That's been happening since I was a principal at the primary school from 2005 to 2015. So we'll continue to do all those things together will help keep us on pace and not be in this situation again in the future.
Awesome, thank you, Troy. So not only am I a chairman on this levy, I'm also a parent. I had 2 kids graduate from Wauseon. I have 2 in the system now. So I'm interested in these answers. I want to know the answers just as much as you guys do. So my next question is, the teacher salaries seem to be a hot topic. So Dave, can you give us a brief history of their negotiated salaries and or raises?
So, and Jason Robinson, our Wauseon Education Association president's here as well. So prior to me becoming superintendent, the current contract with teachers was negotiated. In year 1, there was a 1% increase. Correct me if I'm wrong. In year 2, it was 1.9% increase, and then in year 3, which is this year's percent increase. Last year the teachers voted to reduce. What did I say wrong? 1.8, 1.9? Okay, sorry. My mind is full of numbers. I apologize. 1.8 in year 1, 1.9 in year 2, 2.0 in year 3. In year 2, the teachers voted to reduce that 1.9 to 0.9. So 1.8, 0.9, 2.0. Accurate? Right. So that was the negotiated increases. If you look at the average, if you go out to the State Employee Relation Board and you look at the average ranges from 2, 3, 5%. The average is probably somewhere between 2 and 3% on an annual basis in the state of Ohio when it comes to teacher contracts. Does that answer that question? You know?
I think so. Anybody have thoughts on that one?
Do you have any information on the average salaries of our district compared to other districts?
So the average at Wauseon is $63,179. The average in the NWAL is $63,936, with a high of Liberty Center, $70,878.
Ma'am, can you turn the ring around?
And a low at Patrick Henry of $56,543.
Age ranges and tenure ranges, because that's going to affect that. So you have a district that has a lot of long tenured teachers, that's going to affect that average. Do you have anything like that?
I do at the office, but that's a really complex data point, but we do have a lot of tenured teachers, which is driving up that salary.
I think that's about.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Without going into like the nitty-gritty on a lot of details and things, after the levy failed in November, I did go back and take a look at similar districts, and I pulled up all the collective bargaining agreements from other areas. All the surrounding schools, basically everybody in the NWOAL. And what I found when I went through and I looked at specific years of experience, let's start with bachelor's degree. Bachelor's degree at a new hire, bachelor's degree halfway through your career, 15 years, and bachelor's degree at maximum years. Master's degree at 0, master's degree at 15 years, master's degree at maximum, and then whatever the farthest column over is in terms of education and experience at 0 years, 15 years, and 30 years. What I found is that at no point in time was Wauseon ever at the top of that scale. At no point in time was Wauseon ever at the bottom of that scale. For the most part, we have been floating somewhere in the middle the entire time. And personally, I will say this as union president, and I think that it's a good thing. I think that it's good that we are a competitive school and that we give a fair wage to our teachers. And that's something that we obviously, as a union, are concerned about promoting, but it's never been our intention to make sure that we are outperforming and that we're outdoing everybody else. It's our goal to make sure that we pay teachers a fair enough salary that they're going to come in and that they are a part of this district and they're willing to stay here. As opposed to becoming the kind of district where people come in for 2, maybe 3 years and then go off to find employment in other places that pay higher, more competitive salaries. And that's about all that I can say about that. I mean, the data's out there and it can be looked up, and I've done the analysis and everything, and I wouldn't be standing up in front of you guys like trying to mislead you in any way on that. We've also, just with regards to, because I know the question comes up with regards to raises and things like that, I can say in front of everybody here that in terms of base pay salary and it being in a negotiating year, I've already spoken to the union about this on the whole in a meeting about a month and a half ago and told them flat out that we will not be looking at any sort of a base pay increase this year. For this negotiation and for this contract period. You know, that's just...
Is that the same thing as a wage freeze?
No, that is not the same thing as a wage freeze. I believe firmly that if teachers have been working for their master's degree for 3 years, as many of them started doing during COVID and everything, and they've had a bachelor's degree and they're moving over into a master's degree and they've earned that degree and they've earned that column, that they should be credited for the experience they have. But again, this is also something that gets worked out in negotiations. You know, I can't say that we're going to get it. I can't say that we're not going to get that. But what I can say is we understand the way that the community works right now. We understand that where the position that the community is in, and we understand that the district is making a very, very big ask of this community with regards to this levy. It is not our intention to take advantage of anybody. My goal right now, as the president of the Wauseon Education Association, as the head of the negotiating committee, is to try to save teachers' jobs, is to try to make sure that student services are preserved, is try to preserve the culture of not just Wauseon, not just the Wauseon School District, but the community as a whole right now. It is not to give myself a bonus and a pat on the back.
Well, none of us want to see a teacher leave. We got good teachers, we all appreciate it. But the money still has got to be in the till before you give the raises out. And what soured a lot of people is the last 3 years, the school was operating at a deficit.
Actually, the last 9 out of the 15 years.
Longer than that, and they went into emergency funds, and they got raises 3 years in a row.
I'm just going to say, with regards to that, first of all, I'll pass that over to these two because they can speak more to it than I can. But what I can say is I've sat through every single negotiating committee meeting And one of the things that's on the forefront of our minds every single time is making sure that the people of Wauseon do not suffer as a result of our desire to better our own circumstances. I would love to be a part of a district that walks in and says, hey, you know, are you kidding me? I would kill to be able to go up in front of the union and say, hey, we got what this other district over here got, which is 3% every year for 3 years in a row, and I would absolutely love to do that, but I'll tell you the truth of the matter. I know that that's not fair to the community, and I would never ever attempt to negotiate something like that, especially under the circumstances that we're in right now. The reality of the situation is that we enter into negotiations, and we enter into those negotiations in good faith, and we come to agreements with the board and with the superintendent as a result of those things, and as the result of those negotiations. The other thing that I would say is that 3 years ago, nobody knew that state funding was going to drop out. Nobody knew that there was going to be a pandemic. Nobody knew that we were going to be facing a situation where the state funding was being reduced and the cost of everything else was going to increase as much as it has at this moment in time. And so I think that's the most that I can say about this without stepping outside of my own wheelhouse. So.
Can I ask you to clarify something? So I was talking to a couple of people this past week, and since you're the president of the union, you know the contract. Is it true or false that when they started at the 3-year, they were looking at 8 to 9% pay increases over 3 years, but the teachers had agreed upon 5% over 3 years, and on top of that 5%, there's steps as well? So, because I was told that the teachers didn't get raises, is what I was told this week. But the contract, did the teachers agree? It was 5% over 3 years. So it'd be like 1.7% pay increase annually, plus their steps, which they get based on their bachelor's, their master's, if they're an intervention specialist or anything like that.
I honestly, yeah, I do not see any, I do not believe that's an accurate
So
number.
what was the pay increases over the last 3 years?
1.8, then 0.9, then 2.0.
Which was reduced by 1%.
Yeah,
Okay.
1.9 was reduced by 1%. Right.
Mr. Reese?
Yeah, those are excellent points as far as what has happened in the past. And I just wanted to come out and say, it's really nice to see the community showing up and wanting to participate regardless of what side of this you're on. What I would say is we can't really change much of what's in the past, but I would expect to see all of you showing up to hold people accountable for those kinds of things over the next 10 or 15 years, because apparently it hasn't been happening for the last 10 to 20 years. And to see people participating like they are tonight, when people haven't been apparently for 10 or 20, and if you have, good for you, we just moved back. And when I see people in a room like this is why we moved back. To see people care about a community so much, regardless of whether or not you're a yes or a no or a for or against. What I wanted to say, those are all great questions. Those are all great questions that should have been asked 3 to 10 years ago and held that school board accountable and held that superintendent accountable. Of all the things that have happened through this, I think the one thing that we're missing, and I talked to a gentleman that's in the room tonight about it, over the phone driving back across the country to move back to this community, is you just have to recognize that there's a big ask being made of everyone, whether that's schools asking, or teachers taking less of a pay raise than what they deserve, or whether that's taxpayers having to take more out of their budget that they may or may not have. But ultimately, this decision is either going to kill the future or give birth to a new future. So regardless of what happened 3 to 10 years ago on pay raises, it doesn't really matter now because you can't change it. What we can do as a community is show up like we're showing up tonight and hold the people we elect accountable. and ask them to hold the people we put in a position to lead accountable. If that hasn't been happening for a long period of time, I can see change in the room tonight, one way or the other. That's what I think matters. Sorry.
Thank you. A frequent question, excuse me, I've recently had is an income tax opposed to a property tax, and on the income tax, explain the difference between the traditional and the earned. Because I think there's some confusion on that, on who it affects and who it doesn't affect.
So Dave and I will answer this together, but just a reiteration, so an earned income taxes earned income. So for example, retirement income would not be taxed on an earned income tax because you're not out working. It's something that you're receiving as a retiree. A traditional tax taxes everyone, taxes everyone and everything. And so what are those things? I'm going to have Dave share that.
So it's somewhat confusing, but it's also somewhat simple. So I had somebody call me the other day and said, so I've got, I'm retired and I have retirement income, and my husband's retired and he has retirement income, but he's out working on the side and he's just creating things and selling them online, okay? So the retirement income is just coming in, they're not earning it. They're just sitting there all day and they're taking it in. That generation of that product that they're selling, that gentleman is working every day to earn that revenue, that income. So that's taxable. If you have a piece of rental property, people ask about rental property quite a bit. If it's just sitting over in the field and it's generating income, and you're sitting on your couch watching TV, you're not actively earning that income, so it's not taxed. People ask about corporations. They're not taxed. The only business entity that's taxed through this tax is a partnership. The reason for that is the partners in that partnership do not take a W-2, they take partnership income, which is earned, so that's taxed. If you're in a corporation, you're going to take W-2 income. All those, excuse me, I need some water. All those employees in that corporation are earning that income. So it's very simple. If you're out earning an income, you're going to get taxed. If you're just sitting there taking passive income, you will not. Investment income is the same thing. If you've got investments out there that are earning income and drawing money in, you're not out actively generating.
If you're getting a W-2,
No, it's not just W-2.
so not just W-2, what else?
If you're a sole proprietor, you're out cutting grass, you're not getting a W-2. You're just getting paid by the people you're cutting grass for. So you're earning that income. That's done on a Schedule C income tax return. So.
So that I just hear you say investment earnings are not taxed.
Correct.
If you take the money out.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Can I ask a question on the rental income?
Mm-hmm.
So as far as rental income, if you're, let's say, LLC, and your rental income comes in through your LLC, that is not considered earned income as far as the...
Correct. So an LLC is just a fancy way of keeping liability down. You can have an individual LLC, you can have an S corporation LLC, a C corporation. So the LLC has nothing to do with it.
Okay.
The only business entity that is taxed is either a sole proprietor out earning an income or partnership. Does that make sense?
So not an S corp.
Nope.
Nothing is a corporation.
Correct. Corporate earnings are not taxed.
I would like to point out that S corp passes through to the owners of that corporation, so whatever income they're earning, speak to your CPA, I'm not a CPA. But I'd also like to point out if you're going to pay 1.75 to the Wauseon School District and you're itemizing your deductions, you're creating a, speak to your CPA about this, I know that I'm creating, by moving here, a federal deduction for myself to reduce my federal taxable income, where I don't have much say on where they spend that money. But if I pay it to the school district, I reduce my federal taxable income, and I get some say on how they spend that money. So speak to your CPAs about that. You don't have a CPA, maybe get one if you're itemizing your deductions, and you weren't aware of that.
What was your question, Carly?
Oh, I just wanted a clarification, so if I take money out of investment, am I taxed on that?
No.
I thought that's what you said, no.
That's a type of passive income, and that is not
I
taxed.
just want to make sure everybody heard the question. Did everyone hear that question? Okay.
All right, so I have a question also that we'll pose to Troy or Dave. What are examples of unfunded mandates placed upon the district?
Which, can we tell them what number that is so they can follow along with me? Which number that is? 30. Number 30.
Number 30.
So if you want to follow along, here are some examples of some unfunded mandates that are put upon public education entities, public schools. So the College Credit Plus program is an example of an unfunded mandate. So your child can go to be in high school, even in middle school, take college credit, and the school district pays for that. The books and the credit. A lot of students take advantage of that. We even have students who graduate with degrees before they graduate from high school. Great program. My opinion is the state should fund that. They shouldn't put that on the local taxpayers' burden. I paid for my college 100% by myself, so I understand that. The College Credit Plus, it's great for kids to take some courses and get some college credit. But I don't think that should be on the burden of all the taxpayers of Wauseon to send kids to college. It's my own personal opinion. The legislators do. So that's an example of an unfunded mandate. It's approximately $97,000 a year that costs the district. No money comes in from the state. We can get that from our budget, and we pay that out. Transportation to and from non-public and chartered schools. So we have students who live in Wauseon, and Ohio is a school choice state. So you can go to school anywhere you want. So we have families who choose to go to schools in Napoleon, parochial schools, not non-public schools in Napoleon. It is our obligation by law to pick that child up and take them to Napoleon, to the parochial school, and pick them up and bring them home. Okay? That's an example of unfunded mandate. We don't get any funding for that. So that's another example. The writing of evaluation team reports and individual education programs for non-public and chartered schools. Use that same example. Student goes to a charter or non-public school. It's the responsibility of the school district where that child resides to write the IP for that child, even though they're not coming to our school. They're no longer our student. They live in Wauseon, they go to a chartered or a non-public school. We're responsible to write their individual education program. The receiving school isn't required to follow that plan. Legislation, okay? The writing of the evaluation team report, which is a large report that a school psychologist writes, with the input from regular ed teachers, classroom assistants, speech language pathologists, physical therapists, occupational therapists, I'm missing a ton. The intervention specialist, special education teacher, all those people put in information. The school psychologist writes that report. It is our responsibility to write those evaluations for all the students who attend a charter school that is within our attendance area. Okay? Some districts help us with that, some districts don't. But that is a legislative mandate from the Ohio legislator that could be considered an unfunded mandate. Positive behavior interventions and supports, training and supplies. So all schools have to have a PBIS program in place to help reduce student discipline and increase positive behavior. That is a mandate, but there aren't any funds that come to the district to have your staff trained to do that. So another unfunded mandate. Gifted training and professional development, same thing. We're required, teachers are required to have gifted training in order to teach our gifted kids, and we want to have a gifted program because we have gifted kids. We have gifted and talented kids in Wauseon. We have a lot of them. And that means you are passing state standard or standardized assessments that say you're achieving in a significantly above average range. But the training for those teachers and the professional development for all teachers isn't paid for. Dyslexia training is something that is coming up. It's just legislated. 18 hours teachers are going to have in addition to be able to be dyslexia certified. And there's some trainings beyond that. There isn't any funding coming in from the state to cover that training that is mandated by the state legislators. So that's an example of some unfunded mandates. Can you think of any other, Dave, that I didn't cover? Or any of my other admin here? Oh, yes, okay, good point. Yep. So the other one I forgot about was our incarcerated students. So when a student is incarcerated and is, by a judge, is placed at the juvenile detention center, we have to pay for that education. And it's a daily rate that, if I remember right, it's like $197 a day for those students. And some of those students are there for years. And there isn't any extra funding that comes in to cover that. We just get the standard amount of money from the state for that particular student.
Troy, of all those mandates you just listed, how many of them have come more recently, say in the last 10 years or so, and roughly what are they costing the school district a year? I know you mentioned the one was $90,000 a year, relatively new. So
PBIS, the gifted training has been around for some time, the dyslexia training. The number for PBIS, you know, I would, and I'm going to take this off based on the PD that teachers say. Each building has a team of anywhere from 6 to 10 teachers that have, so when they're gone to training, the substitute is $90 a day for a substitute for those people. So if you did, you know, just alone in substitutes for one day, 90 times probably about 20 teachers. And then the cost of the training and the materials is someone from the primary school. Can you tell me, or is Blake here? What's the cost of PBIS when you send someone to, not PBIS, but the PACS training? It's like $365 to send a teacher to be trained in the PBIS realm at the primary through elementary. I don't have that total, James, but those are just some numbers by individual piece. The dyslexia training, so the legislators passed it. They said to the Ohio Department of Education, figure out how to get this into all the schools. So as the train is driving down the road, or the plane is flying, we're building it, the state's building it. We don't even know what the trainings are yet. The state hasn't said, well, here's what the training looks like. The manual is supposed to be done in October. They pushed it to December. They've now pushed it out to question mark. They don't know. So we don't even have a manual by which to follow from the state. We have the law, which was minimal, but the law, the language of law, but we don't have the guidebook from the Ohio Department of Education saying this is how you do it. So I can't answer that about PBIS.
Bottom line, it's more cost pushed to the district that they don't give us any money for. So here's what you have to do. You don't get any money for it, figure it out.
Right, that is correct. That's what we mean by unfunded mandate, yes. Yes, that would be great.
Another big one that's is our investment in our special education population. So back in 2011, the state came up with this process that's called maintenance of effort. And essentially the way it works is whatever you spend, in 2011 was the baseline year. Whatever we spent in 2011, we have to spend that or more in 2012 on our special education population, which we're happy to do. We invest a lot of money in those kids. And so when you go from 2012 to 2013 from 2012, you have to spend again the same money you spent in 2012 or in 2013 that you spent in 2012. And as you keep going, every year you have to spend exactly the same amount or more. If you do not, you have to start returning money to the state of Ohio. They don't give you any additional money to cover these costs. They just mandate that you have to do it. As a point of reference, our costs have gone from $1.8 million in 2011 to over $3.6 million in 2021. Over 10 years, that is a 104% increase in our investment in those kids with no new money. Joe, do you have a question?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Is there an increase in the number of students being covered?
That's a great question. Do you want to talk?
You heard it, you can do it.
The question was, is there an increase in the number of special ed students? We have been hovering around 10% of our 10 to 11% of our student population is in our special education population since 2011. It fluctuates here and there, but the population hasn't changed a whole lot in that 10-year period. But the mandates that and the requirements that we have to maintain for those kids, it does ratchet up every year. And so we have more and more to do for them, which again, we're happy to do, but it's just an accelerated cost.
This is one of the reasons I'm here tonight, because I keep hearing the argument being made that the district needs to live within its means. And I think that's a trite argument. I think it's a lovely argument if you were talking about raising a kid. But this is the problem. The district doesn't control its budget. The district is not able to say, we have X amount of dollars, so therefore, we're only going to spend X amount of dollars. Because if they have X amount of dollars, but they still have these responsibilities that they're required to do, the district's in kind of a losing position, which is why we're here. Because then they have to have this really uncomfortable conversation with the community to say, look, this is either important to us or not. And, you know, one of the things that hasn't been mentioned is that the staff and the teachers are going to be subject to this tax as well. So it's not like there's going to be some sort of windfall for the people that work for the schools. This is about maintaining the health of the community, despite the fact that there's these tremendous headwinds being provided against the district by outside forces. We have to fight back those outside forces the way we can. After this levy is passed, then we start talking to the politicians and say, let's get our act together. Because I'll tell you what, I'll form a committee and we'll run against any politician that doesn't want to step up. If you're a state politician, this is your problem. Because we don't have equivalency from community to community. I was aware of a community called Vermilion, Ohio, where they benefited tremendously from the Ford plan. It was a bedroom community. There was nothing else there except condos and lake houses. When they lost the Ford plan, it hurt. It hurt the school district. We don't, I mean, unless we're going to find big businesses to come in and take 100,000 square acres in Fulton County and all of a sudden start paying a ton of property tax and save the district. We don't have that. It's not like anyone's knocking down our doors, but I'll tell you what, they won't be knocking at all if the district loses the levy. Because they'll go to a district that has
Well, I do have a question.
Go ahead.
So I spoke with David and Troy a week or so, about an hour and a half, on where your problem is with 30 million a year, roughly, which is like 28 point some million right now.
Hey Harold, can you stand up and face us? I can't hear you, sorry.
So I did speak with Troy and David, and I'm only speaking for myself, nobody else, just me. Not my position. But they told me they made it, the school cost about 30 million a year to operate. But they only get 28.8 is where you're at. So you're short $1.2 million, period. The only thing I didn't ask the question of, we do have bonds yet. We owe money on the schools that we built. Is that true? Correct. How much money do we owe? And what year are these bonds gonna be paid off, which will relieve a lot of money to all of us that we're paying on this money? Where are we at with that?
Just haven't had it.
So to clarify for Harold, or for everyone that hears, so the bond would be the money that the community pass the bond issue to build the 3-8 building and renovate the high school and the primary school. That's the bond that Dave talked about.
And this bond money doesn't really have anything to do with this levy. The levy is going to go into operating. This bond is a completely separate animal, and it's run in a completely separate fund. Anybody that would like to get all of the information on school financing and bonds, come see me, because it's earth-shattering. As of, well, 12/1/2021, which is come and gone, our total debt, interest and all, is $17,300,000 on those bonds. In 2023, our bond payments are going to drop $750,000 annually, which means if you're a property owner, you're going to see a savings of $750,000. Income tax is going to raise 3.8. Before that even kicks in, this bond payment's going to drop. So the net effect is $3 million. So, does that answer your question here?
Yes, the bond money comes out of tax, property tax.
This comes out of property tax. I didn't answer one other question. We have one bond that will be paid off in 2025. We paid off the bond in 2021. And then the final bond, there's only one left, is scheduled to be paid off in 2034. When that happens, that'll be a $1.1 million savings to property owners.
So it'll be 2025. We'll see the 750 fall?
Nope,
Or
2023.
Okay, then the next one's 2025.
No.
Okay, I misunderstood that.
Well, but you need to come see me, because there's balloon payments in there. So
Okay.
the way they have the payments structured, even though the bond's not paid off, the payment on the bigger bond drops
So we have the
significantly.
bonds, and then there's still a mill levy, correct?
That is a mill levy.
The mill levy and the bonds are the same.
For different purposes, but the bond levy was a millage, property tax millage levy. All property taxes are millages to pay for the schools.
Did you move some millage around on our property tax?
We did, we moved inside millage,
What did you move it into?
permanent improvement.
And what bills come out of it?
What that money is earmarked for is Chromebooks for the kids. It's for school buses and for curriculum. That's what that's for. Didn't do anything to your millages.
No, I realize that, I just heard
Yep.
a big move and might cost quite a lot of money.
Yeah, that's what it'll be used for.
Okay. How much money are we saving on all of our solar panels?
Right now, we're not saving any. That didn't cost taxpayers a dime. That actually, that's a hard question to answer, because as I've explained in other meetings, the building project that these bonds paid for is about 12 years old. Mr. Sauber back there, I don't know how many light fixtures we were replacing a month before that project was done, but that project included replacement of over 3,600 light fixtures in the district, which saved us a ton of money in electric. And then we got all brand new fixtures that are guaranteed 100% for 10 years for free. We were spending an inordinate amount of time replacing fixtures and paying people to do so. So to say how much did that save us, I don't know that I could tell you. I can tell you that alone has saved us a lot of money.
Are we getting any benefit from those solar panels and all?
Sure. I mean, what's going to have to happen before that's really going to kick in is electric rates have to increase. You know, and that's part of the plan. So that was a 40-year plan. So it'll take some time, but there'll be savings.
Okay. Question, did the district receive funding for school buses? Receive a grant?
Yes. Yes, so this is question number 36, if you want to follow along. So the state legislators,
Number 36.
not the best with numbers tonight, as you saw earlier, so number 36. So the state legislators in the budget bill set aside $50 million to go out to school districts in Ohio because the buses across Ohio, the bus fleets we have buses 20 years old, we have buses pushing 200,000 miles. And that's consistent throughout Ohio. So that $50 million was through a formula that the state has. They've allocated funding to every district. So the funding allocation is $215,961, and the state said, that's the money we're giving you, and you have to purchase 4 buses. So your option is to purchase those 4 buses and take the $215,000, or say, no thank you, and they send it back to the state, and then they divide it up amongst the other school districts who have said yes. Our Board of Education said yes, we'll take the $215,000. We'll use our permanent improvements, and that inside millage that Dave just talked about, buying buses, we'll use our permanent improvement money, and we'll balance that out, and we'll purchase 4 new buses for the district. One of those buses will be a replacement of our handicap bus. And then the other 3 will be route buses at this time, right? 1 handicap, 3 routes. So a handicap bus, if you've seen our handicap bus, they're the bus with the nose. They have the lift in the back, and then the seats are all movable and can be taken out depending on how many wheelchair students we have to pick up. Sometimes that's 1 in a year, sometimes that's 3 or 4 in a year. It just depends on the needs of our student population.
Troy, can I ask a follow-up to that? So what you're saying is the 4 buses were not purchased with any money that's going to have anything to do with this levy, right? Because it's not operating funds. However, having those 4 new buses can impact positively the operating funds, because operating funds includes maintenance, all the stuff that would have to be done on the old buses, correct?
Where have you been?
You are correct. So if you can stop by the bus garage that we lease for the city on the corner across from Warrior Rings, the old state building, and you can walk in there in a day. We have 4 buses just torn apart. Our mechanic Caleb is tearing them apart, putting them back together. New buses, those will be 4 new buses that he won't have to do that to. Routine maintenance, yes. James?
Yeah, I just want, you're
Bubba.
people call me James.
Okay, Bubba.
I just wanted to ask the room, generally speaking, you don't have to audibly answer. How many of you would put your kids in a car with 200,000 miles on it that was 20 years old? Regardless of how well it's been maintained. I would tell you one of the things that I saw following girls basketball this year is to watch our school pull up next to the teams they were competing with. There's a thing that I don't get to say it, I'm not an athlete, but athletes say, dress good, feel good, play good, right? And watching our girls pull up to the schools they were competing with, the bus that they were on, I don't know how they could feel good getting off the bus. Other than that our teachers and our coaches are doing a pretty damn good job, okay? So I just wanted to point out that we're talking about money to put our kids on to be safe and putting them on 30-year-old machines. I just had to say, if everybody is thinking it, I'll say it out loud. All right?
Lori?
My comment would be, we have 1 mechanic in the district that is responsible for all those buses, and the difference between maybe me driving a hoopty that is 15 years old, every one of those buses is inspected by the State Highway Patrol every single year. And you can't just say, well, this is, the one that's kind of hanging on at the end. We're hoping that it makes, the route. that has to work exactly the same as a brand new bus. I mean, exactly. If there's holes in the seat cushions, they have to be fixed. If there's rust, it has to be fixed. So even though that may seem to be within budgets to have older vehicles, that's really difficult to maintain those to be able to pass those inspections.
Absolutely.
My wife and I, if you ever want to hang out with us, are at Loma Linda's almost every Tuesday. I've met the state bus inspector.
They're very
Please share.
passionate about their jobs.
Can I share?
Please.
I'll be really blunt. He told me he wanted to send his kids to Wauseon to put his kids on those buses.
So Dave's going to add a couple other things, but in 2019 we hired our own mechanic, because before, when it wasn't a minor or a small repair, we had to send it out. You know what it's like to send your machine or anything out and then pay labor on it. We've saved all that labor over the last 3 years by having our own mechanic. Yes, we're paying him a salary, but we're not paying, it's not anywhere equal to what we had to pay in service fees because we didn't get any breaks on service fees because we were a public school.
Just a couple quick points of reference. Do we have another question?
Yeah, I wanted to know how much an average new bus costs.
That's exactly what I'm going to tell you. First of all, there's no such thing as average. The spec sheet is, I think, hundreds of lines long on the quotes, and you just have to go through and pick out what you need for your particular bus. And so our bus supervisor did that just recently for these 4 buses. We submitted them to the Ohio Department of Education. They approved those bids for the purchase of these 4 buses. Last time we bought a bus, those buses were around $90,000. These buses, outfitted exactly the same as those other buses, are $110,000. That's what our economy is doing to us all. The special ed bus, I believe, is around $120,000 because it's got to have the lift and a lot of extra accessories. Again, it's our investment in these special needs kids. And just so Wauseon understands, of all the schools in our area, we got the most money. Now, per bus, we got the most money. Carla, don't call me out on this. But I looked up across the 4-county area, and actually I looked up across some really, really significantly large districts like Toledo and Cleveland and Columbus. We got more than some of those districts for these 4 buses. Okay, so I don't know how many buses they had to buy, but we got a pretty good deal out of this thing. Yes?
I can tell you the company that I retired from over in Montpelier, we supplied a lot of parts to Navistar's bus and also, and I spent quite a bit of time there. I can tell you there's 100,000 ways to school bus here.
Yep. You're right.
The different states, their requirements, one thing I learned, 100,000 ways.
It's a very complex process, and we are required by law. It's about the only thing that we have to bid out, and there's no exceptions. Like if we get into an emergency with something, we can pass a resolution and have an emergency and go ahead and buy something without a bid. You cannot do that with a bus. So it's very competitive, and we get rock bottom prices at $110,000.
So fantastic dialogue so far tonight. It's awesome. So as you walked in, there was this sheet of paper with some like an Excel spreadsheet here, and if you look, the 2021 local tax per student. If our students were being funded the way Patrick Henry funds their students, we wouldn't be here. Okay, we need to step up as a community. Bottom line. Okay, and yes, where have you been? This guy right here. So, early voting starts tomorrow. Go on the website, and this is an informational meeting. So if you're at Walmart, somebody asks you a question about the levy, maybe you're more informed now. If not, you can point them in the right direction. And we do have one more community meeting coming up on the 19th of April at the Wauseon Middle School Cafetorium. So make sure you visit our Facebook page also. We're going to open it up a little bit for some questions, but we've already been here an hour. So.
Going back to the conversation about the raises that were given out to the teachers, can you explain or expound upon how the steps work? Is that controlled by the school or is that the state? How does the steps work?
Oh, I guess Brian, I could probably better talk about this. The steps that Wauseon has is basically part of the standard pattern for raises that happen across the state with regards to teachers. We have two different ways that it works. The first one is with regards to steps, and then the second one is with regards to columns. Steps have to do with years of experience, and there are built-in raises, built-in increases for every single year of experience that teachers have, generally up to about year 15? Yes. Generally up to about year 15, and then after that they stagger off pretty significantly, like maybe a small increase every 5 years or so, something around there. And then along with that, as people increase in their education experience, going in and getting their master's degree, going in and getting additional certifications beyond that, there are other increases that are used to help recognize that. A lot of what we've done and what we had, if you go pretty much anywhere in the state, first of all, I'll say this, it's a pretty standard process, it's a pretty standard procedure that you're going to see everywhere. And so when I talk about, for example, trying to make sure that our salaries and rates are competitive, we're talking definitely across the board. Once again, we're never at the very top, we're never at the very bottom. We're generally always somewhere right in the middle. And I think that shows that Wauseon works to make sure that we're keeping a fair market value for our teachers in the community as well. Now, is it possible to change that? Yeah, but the truth of the matter is that to change that is probably something more that would be a statewide thing and not something necessarily that's going to happen on the local community, because if you start to make those changes on the local community, what you're saying is, first of all, I'll just say this, those first couple of years, I mean, you're getting paid less because you have less experience. I mean, you're still learning how to teach in those first few years. And so, yeah, it does increase with your experience as you go along. To go along with that, though, to take that away and to remove steps and columns, you're basically then setting up a situation where teachers would be incentivized to leave after just a few years and go to other places that have this as a way of staying competitive. Am I saying anything that's out of line right here?
No, I just was looking up so I could actually share the numbers. So the base salary for a new teacher with a bachelor's degree this year, $38,640. When you talk about steps, so there are 40 steps, 0 and then through 40. Steps 12 to step 19 are the same amount of money. Step 21 to step 31 is the same amount of money. And step 32 to step 40 is the same amount of money. So it's not an increase every year in that 40-year line. And you can, if you go out to the State Employee Relation Board, and up at the top you click negotiated agreements, you can find every negotiated agreement in Ohio. Fire, police, school, truck drivers, etc. You can find them all out there, and you can do your own comparison. But you can see this. That's right out there on the SERB's website, and you can see the whole salary schedule, steps and columns out there on the SERB's website.
All right, so I'm gonna have to say one more again, and I'm gonna stand up for this, because This kind of question makes me think that y'all think that this is all the teacher's fault.
Absolutely not. That's not
So,
it.
well, let me have my piece. You've been to every meeting and saying the same thing. So, and I haven't been
Actually, I
to any.
haven't been to all the meetings.
So here's the thing. Even if you fire every teacher and hired them back at that starting salary, you might have saved about $3 million. Do you have a district you want? Do you have a district that you're going to want to send your kids to? Because now you've got first-year teachers filling the whole ranks. You want to go to a first-year dentist? So this is the thing. Jason was talking about the fact that these teachers have been middle of the road in terms of salaries, in terms of increases. They've been doing what they need to do to keep this district competitive. And they're giving up stuff to keep this district competitive. It is not a teacher salary issue. This is not a teacher salary reason we're here. Like we said at the beginning, this is the reason to be ticked off at the former administration or whatever. We have to move forward. What are we going to do to move forward? Pay attention going forward. Get this thing passed and then hold them accountable. And if you hear that something isn't going right, show up and say something then. But we only have a couple weeks to get this passed. And like I said, what kind of district do you want? You want one that has teachers, and if all you did was hire brand new teachers and that's all you had? Do I want to work here as a brand new teacher? Because I'm going to be surrounded by other brand new teachers. The blind leading the blind. That's going to be great.
And a community that doesn't support you.
And I taught 11 years in Arizona, and we had this, what you guys are going to with the levy not passing. I taught with new teachers all the time. They came in, they came out, because they were from the Midwest, and they got theirs, and then their pay didn't increase. You guys said 38 was your starting. After 11 years, I only hit 40. Okay, so if you really want to talk about that and why these teachers are here, I also just started subbing. These teachers go above and beyond what they are called to do. And this is why I moved here for the education for our son. Not because I want to come back and make more money and be a teacher that way, but because this community and what my husband got out of it and the education that's here. But if the levy doesn't pass, I'm telling you, new teachers are going to come in. Your old teachers, they're going to leave. And you're going to wind up with not a great education for your kids. And education is something that you cannot take away, but you can directly impact. So if you want to impact it negatively, then you know your choice and what you're voting for. But if you want a positive impact, stop blaming the teachers. Like you said, let's move on. We can't fix the past, and say something and do better.
So I just want to give you a perspective. So in this school year, the 21-22 school year, all employees received a 2% increase. That was approximately $200,000, okay? That is not going to solve the issue, okay? So that's the reality. It's $200,000. A pay freeze will generate $200,000, okay? So that's what, at 2%. So just perspective, that's where that number was.
Can you reiterate, well, when you talked about the increase in the teachers, what about your insurance in those 3 years? What is the percentage increase that you had in insurance? Because Brian said that is huge. For negotiating any more inside is extremely, and it's continuing to go up.
Yeah, so our insurance increase for the past 3 years has been 8%, 8%, 9%. We did leave the consortium and negotiate our own insurance with a company, which is saving us, Dave, what's it going to look like? So we were 8, 8, 9. We froze.
We negotiated 2 years with no increases. And those increases that we've experienced over the last 3 years, it's kind of an unfunded mandate because we didn't get any more money. They're in excess of $200,000 a year in premiums. So in 3 years, it's over $600,000 in premium increases, and we got no new money to cover those costs. We just had to cut services to cover those costs. That's what we did.
Did you have something?
When we changed in terms of the savings of money?
That's yet to be seen.
I just wanted to add one last thought with regards to the issue of the columns, and then I will step aside. for a moment, and that is, I started teaching in 2003. I started in Dayton, and then I spent 2 years in Indiana. I came to Wauseon in 2006. From the time that I started in 2006 at Wauseon until now, the landscape of education has changed greatly. It is tremendous. The way that technology has transformed our educational system, it is tremendous. The way that education has become so much more individualized, and the way that teachers have to work really hard to cater to the individual needs of each and every student. With regards to our columns, one of the reasons why the state systems are set up this way in order to do this is to incentivize teachers to continue to go back and get retrained continuously again and again, so that we are up to date and so that we can go ahead and offer the best education possible to students. And provide the best services overall to the community on the whole. And so if you want the explanation as to why the system exists the way it does, I guess the first thing is, I don't think that any person up here was around when the system was designed. We all walked into it, but this is the way that it is. And if we want to stay competitive as teachers, if we want to stay competitive as a school, if we want to provide the best opportunities for the students and help to preserve the culture of this community, a community that I graduated from, a community that I came back to because of its focus on students, because of its focus on the future, because of its focus on the children, and because of the traditions that this town has built up, then it's important that we maintain, that we go ahead and continue, making sure that we're being fair to everybody. That means the teachers, that means the community, that means the students. And I think that's all that I really have to say.
Teresa, you have a question? You have a question?
I do. So with the levy passing, the 2023 and 2024, we're still going to be operating on deficits, correct?
That's highly likely.
Okay. And so it's nothing against the teachers. I love Wauseon schools. I'm a graduate of Wauseon school. I have a son who graduated in 2014. I have a son that will be a senior next year. Do I want to see sports gone? Absolutely not. I find it funny that everybody feels like we're just attacking teachers. We're not attacking teachers. I'm a nurse. I finally we've gotten little raises. My husband hasn't got a raise in 4 years. Every profession, regardless if you're a custodian to working at Walmart, every human being deserves a raise. Not just our teachers, but everybody. But not everybody gets raises. Our fear, the ones that we've talked about the raises, is we're going to be still working in deficits, even if we pass this 1.7% levy in 2023 and 2024. This is an operational levy, correct? So we're not fixing the roofs or anything. In your words, you guys have put Band-Aids on things for over several years. In your words, we've been working in deficits 9 of the last 15 years. So we're taking and we're getting raises out of savings. In 5 years, if we continue on this way, we're going to be back in the same boat. How do we prevent this? And so this is where we're like, okay, if we did a pay freeze that would save us $0.6 million every other year, just for 2 years, would that help I'm not saying it will, I'm asking, would it help us to get more even kills so we're not working in those deficits for 2023, 2024, so we can quit putting Band-Aids on things and fix them correctly?
So I'm not sure where you get your $1 million number. I just said a 2% increase is $200,000 for all staff in the district. So this year's
for 1 year.
For 1 year at
Okay,
2%.
So $400,000 for 2 years.
If it was 2%, remember, it was 1.8, then it was 0.9, and then it was 2.0. So if it was at 2%, yes, it would be 200,000 times 2 years would be 400,000.
On the percent, but then you had your steps in your account.
But steps are across the country.
So
In
even
Arizona,
if the
in
school
Arizona,
takes
I
a
have
pay
steps.
freeze, and I'm asking, I'm not saying I know, okay, let's one, I haven't been at every single meeting.
No, I'm just
And I
saying
do
that-
have a voice, and I do have a
do.
due diligence, and I'm being informed, and I met with New Horizons for 2 hours. So even if they did a pay freeze, they'd still get the steps and columns, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so the pay.
If that's
okay.
what was negotiated.
Okay, so
We-
if we negotiated a pay freeze, it could be that 0.6.
It could be, yeah.
Okay.
And that's where,
But
hold on,
would
hold
it
on.
be ratifiable? Probably not.
But that's where the love for the community and all of us come together. If we all came to the table, us, the teachers, the custodians, everybody.
So,
put
let me give you
it as
an
a
analogy. That would be
bill.
like requiring you to get PALS certification and not paying you for it. Or you have to keep up with all your certifications.
You know
Would
what?
you give it up?
If I would take a pay freeze for 5 years, if that meant saving Jameson, Bubba his job, you your job,
But
you
still,
wouldn't
you
have
would do
to ask
PALS, you
me.
do
I would
your
say-
ALS certification, you do all the certifications you need for the district.
Well, you know, some of the certifications I carry, I pay for myself.
I think we have some good questions, you know, and
I think she brings up a really valid point, and I want to address the issue about how you fix the funding in the future.
That's my huge question right there.
I'd like to address that. That was the big question that I heard. Guys, Hugo pointed out this spreadsheet. I'm here to tell you guys the 1.75, for it or against it, it's not enough. That's what you're pointing out. Asking the teachers to do what you may or may not do according to your, I don't think that's appropriate at all. I think what we should be doing is asking our community to support the schools the way the other schools in the area do.
Yeah.
That's the right thing.
So you go about it.
When you look at how we're funded here,
I agree with that wholeheartedly, but we
it's
have to
shameful.
get
Thank you.
these
that
even killed.
we shouldn't ask our teachers to take a sacrifice when we as a community have not made the sacrifice other schools have.
agreed.
Everybody wants to send our kids to the best school.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to pay.
Absolutely. Pay for it.
Coffee shop, and I see 2 more coffee shops opening up, and some people are there every morning for their $5 coffee. No one wants to go off anything at their home.
Yes, that's.
Just a couple other notes before we go, because we've been just about an hour and a half. If you don't get a copy of the frequently asked questions, you can go to the Wauseonlevy.com. There's a ton of information on there. Also, if you want yard signs, they will be in this week. Just fill out the form for a yard sign, and then you'll be contacted on how and where you can pick those up. Okay? You go.
Really quick. The Wauseonlevy.com website is constantly being updated. So if you think of something, send it to us and we add it to the website. It's a constant moving piece, and it's a great way for everyone to fill their minds with every question that you can possibly have. So we welcome anything. We want to add it to that website. But
Today is the last day to register to vote.
So go online.
Today is the
Today.
last day to register by
Yes.
9 p.m. 40 Board of Elections
Yes.
is open till 9.
If you haven't, please do.
Thanks everybody for coming.